You asked some controversial questions about China, and I am here to answer them, and I promise you to give you brutal honesty. Whew. I'm not sure how I feel about doing this, but I feel like when people talk about China online, they're either super negative or super positive, and I'm just here to answer some controversial questions, some hot topics that you have asked with brutal honesty. These are all questions that I've been asked multiple times, so let's jump in. But before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, these are obviously going to be generalizations. Have I taught in every single school in the country? No. Is every single Chinese person the same? Obviously not. So these are going to be generalizations. And number two, these are all just going to be my experiences or experiences that I've gotten from my friends. Hi, I'm Megan. I've been in China for over 10 years. So I've heard a lot of things firsthand, but I've also had a lot of friends who have been teachers, who have not been teachers and worked in other industries, or I've had friends who have been recruiters. So everything I share today is going to be what I have heard from them or what I've heard and experienced firsthand in the workplace. Let's jump into them. Okay, the first question is, what I am learning is no matter what your credentials are, young white females with blonde hair and blue eyes are always preferred in the hiring process. We are a Pakistani American couple. What is our chance of being hired? We're starting off with a big one here. Is this true? Is there in China? I'm not sure if I can say that on YouTube. Does it exist in China? Of course it does. It exists all over the world, every country, every people group, you're going to find this, and it does still exist in China. So does this discrimination exist in China? Absolutely. As someone who was young, white, female when she first arrived in China, I was afforded a lot of privileges that are not given to other people. I've heard this from employers, I've heard this from recruiters, and I've heard this from other friends who have been looking to find teaching jobs. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is a lot of employers will overlook one person's resume in favor of another person's resume, not because of their experience, not because of their qualification, but because of their passport or their skin color. Does that mean it's impossible to find a job? No, absolutely not. The last two companies and schools that I've worked with, we've had a pretty diverse group of international teachers. And I will say, I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, I have noticed it getting better. Does that mean that you can't find a job? No, absolutely not. Keep applying to places. And like I said, it has gotten better in the last few years. Let me give you some advice that I've heard from my friends who have been recruiters. Number one is understand that the person you're talking to, the interviewer or the recruiter, might not have the final say in this decision. A lot of the recruiter friends I've had said they're interested in hiring a diverse staff, but it's the person above them who is closed-minded that will veto everything. So keep in mind that you might not be talking to the person who's ultimately in charge of making that decision. And number two, the advice all my recruiter friends have given me is to just emphasize your passport, because that's truly what the visa office cares about. It's truly what the country cares about. You need to have a visa from certain countries, from native English speaking countries, China's list of native English speaking countries, in order to get a working visa. So really emphasize the fact that this is your passport, this is your language, this is your culture. If you were born into that passport, you know, someone from the US or someone from Canada or someone from the UK, someone from Australia, etc., really emphasize the fact that you were born and raised there. You are a native English speaker. If you did get your passport a little bit later, emphasize how much time you've spent in the country. Show off your English abilities. Now, why am I even saying this? Because it sounds so messed up. Of course, a native English speaker can look like anything, but I've found that is the general thought process, especially in the older generations in China. When you say an English speaker, they have a clear vision of what that person looks like, and that person always has white skin. So many times my students ask me, oh Megan, if I travel to the US, will people stare at me the way that people in China stare at you? And I tell them, no one's going to stare at you if you go to the US, because they don't know that you're not American. Because what does American look like? Americans don't look like one thing. I'm using the US as an example because that's where I'm from, but China's a unique country because it really has separated itself throughout history. And so if you are in China, you are going to see mostly Chinese people who look Chinese, and that's just not the case when you travel to the UK or when you travel to Australia. You're going to see this diversity, and a lot of the older generation in China just has not updated their ideas. In their mind, a native English speaker is white. So can you find a job? Absolutely. Just know that you are going to face different stereotypes and different obstacles compared to someone who is white. And that is something that I don't talk about very much, but it is something that is like constantly in the back of my mind, the white privilege that I do experience living in China as a foreigner. Kind of going off the first question, what about if you are Asian or you are ethnically Chinese? So I'm Canadian and I would consider moving there for real, except I'm ethnically Chinese and feel like people would not recognize me as a native English speaker. Have you worked with or met other foreign English teachers that don't look foreign? Absolutely. There are a couple of teachers at my current school who are Asian. And like I said, I have noticed something changing the last 2 or 3 years. It is getting a lot better. The same advice I would say exists. Just emphasize the fact that you are a native English speaker. You are from the UK. You are from Australia, for example. I also have noticed, I teach at a university, the students don't care. Students don't care. It's usually the older generation administration that will care a little bit more, but to be honest, I would say all of this applies the same way. When older generations, closed-minded people are thinking of English teacher, they are thinking of white, but there are definitely a lot of people who are Asian teaching in China. Next one. Thanks so much for sharing this information. I've been questioning this decision for many years. My family always asks me if it's even safe to go to China. I have been asked so many variations of this question. So is it safe to go to China? Now, there are bad people everywhere. You have to be aware of your surroundings everywhere. I probably could make an entire video on this topic because there is so much to say about the word safety in China and the idea of safety in China, because I think the idea of what is safe in China is actually quite different from what is safe in other countries. Like how to move through the country and how to navigate the idea of safety is so different in China compared to other countries that I've lived in or traveled to. Are there bad people everywhere? Have I felt unsafe in China? Of course I have. I've lived there for many years. I've felt unsafe in many different situations. But if you ask me to give an easy one-word answer, is China safe? Yes. I generally feel very safe in China, especially compared to other countries. I feel safe as a woman. I feel safe walking alone at night. I generally feel safer in China in a lot of aspects compared to other countries. However, like I said, the idea of safety is so different in China compared to other countries. So in some situations, I feel super safe. For example, walking home from the subway alone at night. Super safe. I feel fine. Other situations, that feeling of safety can just switch at the drop of a hat. I would say to have a truly safe feeling in China, you really need to understand how to move through the country and how to move through the culture. It's those cultural and political aspects that can lead you to feeling unsafe, not so much the daily life aspects like walking on the street, getting pickpocketed, things like that. If you're thinking about coming to China and the thing that's holding you back is the idea of safety, don't worry about it. You should absolutely come. Maybe I will make a whole nother video so I can really dive into how to be safe in China and how this idea of safety really works, because I genuinely think it's too complex to really go into in this video. Because the way to be safe in the US is just totally different from the way to be safe in China. Next question. I'm definitely considering China as one of my top countries. In order to teach in China though, do you need the HSK? So many people have asked, do you need to learn Chinese? Do you need to have the HSK? The HSK is the Chinese standardized exam. So if you're studying Chinese and you want to prove your ability, you want to prove your level, you'll take a test called the HSK. Now this might be controversial, but I don't think you need to know Chinese in order to work there. When I stepped off the plane, I basically knew hello and thank you, and that was it. So much of your life will be in English if you want it to be in English. Usually when you're working, they will create an English atmosphere for you. So your boss will speak English. They'll help you with your visa paperwork in English. They'll help you do all of these things when you walk into the classroom. The classrooms are completely in English. No one is expecting you to use like half English, half Chinese. That's what the local Chinese teachers are there for. So do you need to speak Chinese in order to land a job? No. Your interview will be in English, your resume will be in English, you'll teach your classes in English. To be honest, you can live your life completely in English. Now, for daily life, should you learn Chinese? Is it a good idea to learn Chinese? Absolutely. If you're going to live in a country, it's going to make your life a lot easier to be able to move through the country and communicate with other people, speak the language. Also, if you're going to move to another country and be part of their culture, I think you have an obligation to at least try to learn the language as well. So for those work-related tasks, you'll be okay. You can use English at the workplace. Now, will it help you out if you can speak Chinese well? Sure, but really no one is expecting you to speak Chinese at the workplace. However, you go outside, you're buying groceries, you're ordering food at a restaurant, you're taking a taxi. All of these things, yeah, it's definitely going to be helpful to learn Chinese, and it's going to be helpful to integrate yourself into the culture. That being said though, I mean, when I came to China, smartphones were just becoming a thing. So we didn't even have dictionaries, translation apps. We didn't have any of that today. You could pretty easily navigate ordering food at a restaurant because most places now you just scan the QR code and you don't even have to speak to someone. You can use Didi, which is their version of Uber, and you don't have to speak to people. You can navigate through China more and more without speaking Chinese. So is it an absolute necessity? No. Should you learn it? Yes. But if that's the thing that's holding you back, don't worry about it. Just come and you can learn when you get here. Next question I've been asked so many times is there a maximum age of working? Let's say if someone is above 70 years old. Now, here's another part of the unspoken rules of hiring a foreign teacher. They are looking for young teachers. So, will they tell you that there is a maximum age? No. Let me explain it this way. If we're talking about what an employer is looking for and what they're thinking of when they say a foreign English teacher, they're thinking of someone who is white and young. That is their vision. That's their idea of someone. So they essentially just want someone to be really excited. They want someone to bop in there with lots of personality and lots of excitement. And so they're looking for someone who's generally younger. We also haven't even gotten into the whole pretty privilege, handsome privilege that also exists in China as well. Does that mean when I walk into a staff meeting, everyone there is in their 20s? Actually, no. A lot of people do come to China when they're young and then they end up staying. So if you walk into a room, you will find so many teachers who are in their 40s, who are in their 50s. Now, in their 60s, that's where it really does seem to drop off a little bit. So if you're in your 60s, if you're in your 70s, I don't really see that many people, that many foreigners in China. Now, that could also just be because they wanted to return to their home countries at that age, or it could be that they're not freshly coming to China. The 70-year-old is not getting on a plane and wanting to start a new life over in China. I would say, especially now, especially after COVID, most of the people I see are in their late 30s and in their 40s. Now, if you go on social media, you'll find a lot of younger people who are making vlogs and making videos about their experiences in China, but I'm just talking about the normal foreigners I see in restaurants that are in my staff meetings. Most of people are 30 to 50, actually. The last thing I will mention about that, though, is the older you are, the more difficult it is to get a work visa as well. So I believe it's if you're over 55, they start to look a little bit more carefully at your work visa. So if you're under 55, it's a little bit easier to get that work visa granted. Okay, let's talk about non-native speakers. So how can a non-native get into Chinese schools teaching English? And someone else said, I have a Mexican passport, I speak American English, I don't have a degree, I speak decent Chinese. What are my possibilities to work in China? I have a couple of Chinese friends who told me I can work in private schools without a degree. Now, this is what we consider a gray area or a hot topic. In order to get a legal working visa from the government. You do need a bachelor's degree and you do need a passport from China's list of English-speaking countries. I've made some videos about this in the past. I can link that down below. And actually, I might just make it a completely dedicated video of talking about all of the requirements for becoming a teacher in China. So in order to get a legal work visa, you do need a bachelor's degree and you do need a passport from China's list of English-speaking countries. If you don't have those though, people do work under the table. I've met so many people who are in the country working without a work visa. Do I recommend this? No, because you are technically working illegally. So there's going to be a certain level of risk associated with that. But a lot of people will still work under the table. But just because someone is working in China does not mean that they're working as an English teacher. So at my school, we have an Arabic teacher, we have a Spanish teacher, we have a French teacher, we have a Japanese teacher. None of these people have passports from English-speaking countries because they don't need to have a passport from an English-speaking country if they're teaching Japanese, if they're teaching Arabic. I have a lot of friends who are art teachers and music teachers, and they don't need to have a passport from an English-speaking country because they're not getting a work visa to teach English. You also will find a lot of foreigners who are working in China who are not teachers. I have friends who work in HR, who work in marketing, and for those, you don't need to be from an English-speaking country. And in fact, right now, post-COVID, China really is looking for a lot more business opportunities and a lot more connections. So if you do hold a Mexican passport, and I assume that you speak Spanish, perhaps it would be a really valuable asset to a company who wants to build up more commercial and business connections with Mexico or with other Spanish-speaking countries. So there are so many opportunities for people in China. I think China and Asia in general just has a reputation of, oh, if you want to go there, you have to teach English. But there are really so many other job opportunities. If you want to teach English and get a legal working visa, you do need your bachelor's degree and a passport from one of China's lists of English-speaking countries. But the other possibilities are endless. You can be an art teacher, a math teacher, a science teacher. You can work at a company, HR, marketing. There are tons of opportunities available to you as well. And China is more open, I think, than they have been in the last few years regarding those other alternatives. Okay, last question, because I think I've been talking for a while. I'm considering teaching in China as I have a friend teaching in a university near Beijing. That's so cool. How did you find community there when you first arrived? Is the language barrier big? And how do you connect with family back home given bans on certain apps? Okay, I think I will make a separate video talking about the community there because I could go into that for a while, but I did want to talk about this hot topic about bans on certain apps. A lot of other people have asked, how are you even uploading videos on YouTube? Yada, yada, yada. Are VPNs legal? This is a gray area. Is Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of those things blocked? Yes. But if you have a VPN, you can work around them. If you want to understand something about Chinese culture, you have to understand that it's a very one eye open, one eye closed type of situation. There are a lot of gray areas, and these apps are in that gray area. Basically, is the government going to encourage you to download VPNs and access Western social media? No. But if you do it, if you don't cause problems, and if you are a foreigner yourself, they generally kind of overlook it, and it's not really a thing. It's not really an issue. It's a little bit complicated sometimes to download them and get everything working, and sometimes the connection will be spotty, and sometimes it takes me forever to upload a YouTube video. But generally it's okay. And so how I keep in touch with my family, actually the best thing is just iMessage. So convenient because I can just send messages to my family. In the US, most people use iMessage to communicate, but yeah, I can use Instagram and Facebook if I wanted to. YouTube, all of those things are accessible, but you have to have a VPN first. If you're looking for VPN recommendations, maybe I can make a video about that, because there are a lot, and a lot of them are bad. I use Watopia. I can leave a link down below. I absolutely love them. I've tried so many, and that is the only one that I have consistently kept since I first came to China. That's the only one that has worked consistently, so I love them. I trust them. I they're amazing. I think that's all the questions we have time for today. But like I said, these were just my experiences. If you've had a different experience, please leave them in the comments down below, especially for some things. Like, I am white, so I can't speak to exactly what it feels like to walk into an interview if I'm a different person. So if you have had different experiences, please leave them in the comments down below. The more experiences we share, the more people can get a generalized idea. And also, if you have other controversial questions, you can leave them down below. And if you want to watch more videos about how to be a teacher, how to improve your teaching, or what life in China is like, I've got plenty of videos that you can check them out on the channel. If you're thinking about coming to China, you might like this video that talks about what you need to know before you move to China. Okay, that's all for today. I'll see you next time. Bye.